Now, last year, we got our first insight into what life was like for the Duke and Duchess of Sussex in the biography Finding Freedom.
Well, co-authors Omid, Scobie and Carolyn Durand collaborated with sources close to the couple in order to write the biography. They both join us now to share their first thoughts following last night's interview. Morning to both of you. Let's start, first of all, with these stories of the fact that the Duchess was essentially suicidal and wasn't getting the help that she was crying out for. Omid, were you aware of this?
I mean, I think those around Meghan had sort of expressed, even to myself and to Carolyn, just how difficult it was for the Duchess at that time. But you know, we have to remember that last night's revelation was something intensely personal that Meghan has really kept to herself. I think there are a lot of people, including those in her inner circle, that would be very surprised by just how bad things got in the sort of darkest moments. But I think ultimately this does highlight just how difficult it was for her. You know, she often spoke to friends about feeling unprotected, unheard within the institution and even by certain family members. And I think we've really seen from that interview with Oprah just how much of a negative and toxic impact it had on her mental health.
Carolyn, I wanted to ask you, because before the interview, you weren't expecting the couple to be so specific about family members, and yet, as we've just seen it all played out, they were very specific. What did you think about that?
Well, I think that this was an opportunity for Harry and Meghan to finally tell their story, to tell what they endured and their truth. I don't think any of us anticipated that they would be quite so specific. However, I also think that in some respects, this may have been cathartic for them and an opportunity to start the process of healing over what was obviously a very difficult, dark time for the two of them. And they're obviously, as Camilla said, and as we heard last night, in a much happier place now. Meghan, in fact, said that she is surviving and thriving.
Omid, there is, as we've discussed here already, a section on the racism that she was forced to endure. Social media, not just the print media or the online media, but social media as well. Were you aware of that strength of feeling and the impact that was having on both of them?
Yes, I mean, I think that's something that Harry and Meghan certainly weren't silent about, even within the institution and with those close to them. You know, it was really difficult for them to feel so unheard when it came to dealing with issues, when it came to racism. There were moments where Harry and Meghan felt frustrated by the palace's sort of lack of immediate action, at the awful messages that were being left on social media accounts within the palace. In fact, it took 6 to 8 months to do anything about that. And I think that just goes to show you how, at the very least, the institution was unprepared to deal with something like this. But of course, what we found out last night, that it was much worse, that issues including, you know, race conversations, negative race conversations about their own child were had within the family. And, you know, that's going to be something really difficult for the royal family to now deal with, because, you know, this never complain, never explain mantra isn't going to cut it on this occasion, particularly when last week they were so open about launching an internal investigation against bullying in the workplace. This is a far worse claim, and silence, which we're so far getting from the palace this morning, won't do.
Carolyn, did you know about that claim? Because it was Meghan here. She claimed that somebody in the royal family made negative comments about how dark Archie's skin might be. Were you aware of that?
No, when we were putting the book together, we weren't aware of that particular claim. We were aware of racism within the institution. I do think it can't be overstated that this is probably much more, is going to be a much more difficult issue for the monarchy to handle than it's had to deal with in any of the past big interview that we've seen, and potentially will have much greater repercussions for the monarchy, for the family. What we heard last night about the racism and not giving Meghan support when she was dealing with her mental health was very hard to hear. And I suspect in the United States as well, that will be a particularly difficult pill to swallow.
Well, thank you both very much
Thank
indeed
you.
for joining us today.
Good to talk to
We
you
could
today.
spend the entire day talking about this. In fact, little people probably will tomorrow when everybody's seen it. One final question to
Sure.
you. Within the palace walls today, will they be thinking, we have to come out fighting?
Oh, yeah, well, they'll have to respond, and we'll wait for that. And I think they're taking their time over that quite rightly, rather than just, you know, some scattergun of briefings. But, I mean, I think for everyone involved on any side of this, what they want is to be listened to, and I include the people who have claimed about the bullying, let alone what's been claimed in the last few hours, and for the institution to react appropriately. And I think that's what the public would expect too. You know, there's been a degree of transparency on all sides of this issue, of all sides of Megxit. And what needs to happen now is a thorough investigation take place to actually say, are lessons ever going to be learned? I mean, you made the point about, well, history shouldn't repeat itself. That's the point Harry's made himself. And I think
Look,
the
history-
public will demand that something changes and something is addressed here, won't
History
they?
clearly has repeated itself. In fact, they said the only people that they could go to when it came to the mental health issues were Diana's friends.
Yeah.
Now, if ever a lesson should have been learned on the severity and impact and depth of mental health issues, especially within that family, within that institution, it just looks like nothing was learned at all. Shut up, keep quiet, we've all been through it, you'll be okay.
Well, possibly. I mean, without knowing exactly what the conversations were and having both sides of this, we have only had one side.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think Oprah asked all the right questions,
Yeah.
but she was a sympathetic audience and answers were given, and sometimes they weren't gone over. You know, this is one side of this narrative. I think it's really important to say that. And of course, they've come up with some really alarming claims that merit further investigation. But I do also think that the people who have been referenced here deserve a right of reply, and for us to probably reserve judgment until we hear that, don't you think?
Yep, okay.
Yeah.
Good, thank
yeah,
you.
absolutely. Thank you.